Alrighty everyone, welcome back. It is now August 11th of 2023, and given that we are getting closer to that official trailer debut of Snow White 2024 by the beginning of next month, as Disney is preparing to really kind of lock down a lot of live-action adaptation films apart from everything else, they are focusing on what's up and coming, such as the Marvels, Snow White, and exactly how that's going to be presented in the marketing, and how it rolls into its release dates. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. And let's get right into exactly what's going on with Snow White 2024. Now, I've said this many times that Snow White is looking to be a very ironic released by Disney because this is where everything started for the animated films, and it could very well end for Disney when it comes to Snow White in live action. It would be quite ironic if that ends up happening, and if this movie ends up being that much of a box office failure that it hits Disney that hard. Now, specifically, what's been going on between Rachel Zegler and Gal Gadot, and how they've been explaining about what the movie really focuses on, and how this is all a film about Snow White rising up to become a leader, and that she needs no true love, she doesn't need to be saved by the prince, that's not going to happen, and how it has a modern spin on it. It's not 1937 anymore. However, what's going on specifically with the plot, we're going to be going over specific plot points of this movie that really is going to be, I think, a very much disastrous effect on the film, and just goes to show you how Disney is so out of touch with reality once more. Now, with Snow White 24 going through major issues still behind closed doors, one important development has much to do with the story itself. Now, one big scene that was filmed back in June of 2022 involved both Rachel Zegler and Gal as the evil queen, where they are confronting each other outside of the castle, where the dialogue exchanged between the two reportedly goes over how the evil queen believes Snow White and her weak point is the emotion of love. Zegler's dialogue, of course, goes back toward the evil queen, to where she drops a line of dialogue explaining how she doesn't fall for love, but that she rises to lead. In back, of course, of her are the 7 magical creatures, aka the 7 dwarfs, holding what appear to be primitive weapons. The sequence shot involves the 7 dwarfs cheering for Snow White as they raise their magical weapons. Now, apart from that, another scene that was later shot back in July of 2022 that remains intact for the final cut of the film involves the 7 dwarfs all singing and dancing with Snow White in a circular fashion in front of their village in the middle of the woods at night as they have a campfire. There is even a scene where the 7 magical creatures actually has, of course, a moment where Disney calls them that, begin to tell scary stories of the evil queen and her royal family. The scene is reportedly something that comes straight out of a B movie, of a very generic, scary storytelling session between all 7 characters. Now, let me just pause here for a second. Now, I don't even know where to begin with this movie. I don't know what it's trying to be. I don't know which direction it's really going in. It sounds like it has a mixture of different genres thrown into this thing. I'm getting vibes of Snow White and the Huntsman being thrown in here. I'm also getting little vibes of, like I said before, terrible B-movie status being thrown into specific scenes surrounding the 7 dwarfs. Interestingly enough, though, the fact that we have Zegler's performance of Snow White kind of going against the evil queen and saying how she doesn't fall for love, but that she rises to lead, this fits directly in with what Rachel Zegler said months ago about how this is a character, a different iteration of Snow White, so to speak, that is not going to be like the traditional one from 1937, where she needs a true prince or true love, or specifically, of course, falling for the prince. That's not going to happen. Now, it really sounds like there are elements thrown in from Snow White and the Huntsman into this version of the film. The reason why so many people have problems with this, of course, is because Bob Iger, you guys may recall, back in 2021, even though he wasn't really on board at the time, really came forward about his view of the plans of Snow White, and even said that it was going to follow the original outline of the original. Even Bob Chapek, talked about this, about how their plans for Snow White, it was going to be a beat-for-beat live-action remake of the original. That turned out to be a complete lie, and that turned out to be completely false. And so that's why I think a lot of fans are also having issues with this direction of the film, is because they had a false promise by Disney's CEOs, right? The two Bobs, right? Anyway, beyond this. On top of that, this is where things get even worse, is that the worst sequence of all, that was filmed toward the tail end of July, involved a moment where Jonathan, who was the new love interest, if you even want to call him that, in this film, tries to gain approval of Snow White after saving her from falling off the edge of a cliff during the third act when facing the evil queen. Now, Zegler's Snow White reportedly snaps back at Jonathan and delivers dialogue explaining how she can handle herself and that she needs no help. This comes after Snow White is seemingly struggling to climb up from the cliff as she brings herself up after Jonathan tries to help her. The dialogue between Snow White and Jonathan are reported to be near similar to Phoebe's Helena Shaw bullying Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones 5, The Dial of Destiny. Not a big surprise there, because once again, this is Disney after all, and I'm not too surprised about that. Now, here's the other problem, is that not only do you have cringeworthy dialogue, but you also have forced cringeworthy dialogue to get the point across that Zegler's version of Snow White is a leader in this film that does not want to fall for emotions, because she views the emotions as a distraction against her gaining control of her own leadership and taking after her father. Now, I don't know if you guys knew this, we talked about this, and also Rachel Zegler touched on this, that her father's legacy is going to be a part of Snow White's story. It's almost sounding like they're trying to set it up that she's a part of this royal family, and how that's going to be a highlight, more so than ever before in this film in a different way. So, what's interesting though, is the fact that they are trying to go about doing this in a very inauthentic manner. The fact that they have Jonathan, who is not Prince Florian, and the fact that they are shifting away from the traditional love story of 1937 and focusing on Snow White being this leader, this Mary Sue-esque character. Let's be honest here, that's what it is at the end of the day. And we also went over a couple weeks ago, actually, about how the huntsman in this film is actually going to get quite a beating from Snow White. We also talked about that, in case you guys missed it. When you're not going to have the scene like in the 37 original where Snow White gets frightened by the huntsman. It's actually quite the reverse, where the huntsman actually falls victim to Snow White and she gains the upper hand against him. So anyway, I would really like to hear what you all have to say about this film so far. It's sounding like a major disaster. They should just cancel the entire thing already. Batgirl this movie. And if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys next time.
From night to moon, we hear them moans again. No.